Hi, everyone. We've made it to week 11 of the college football season. We finally have a nice, warm starting point for the College Football Selection Committee. We've been waiting all year for it. We finally got it on Tuesday. A lot to discuss, right? There were some teams that were a little bit higher than we expected, a lot of teams that were a little bit lower than we expected, right? You're talking about Indiana, BYU, both undefeated, both having a great year, but only 8 and 9. That rubs some people the wrong way. But regardless, we now have the projected scores for week 11. We know where everyone's sitting. We have the algorithm to try and predict where they're going to be next. Let's go ahead and dive on into rankingsrightnow.com to see what we can expect from the selection committee going into week 12 based off of the forecasted games that we are going to see this weekend. Now, here we are on www.rankingsrightnow.com. Go ahead and create a login. It's totally free. Go ahead and sign up to our newsletter. It goes into the same deep dives, but a little bit deeper, a little bit more data to cover. Here we are. Here are your projected top 25 teams based off of what is projected to be the week 12 top 25 to the selection committee, and not a ton of movement, right? You see a couple of flip-flops between Georgia and Ohio State, Alabama and Notre Dame, a couple of stuff happening between 15 and 18, but overall, not that much craziness happening, right? So, what are the reasons for, for these changes, right? The main thing that we need to be paying attention to is Georgia and Ole Miss and Alabama and LSU, right? Why Georgia and Ole Miss? None of these teams can move up because Georgia is holding that 2 spot, and if they're projected to beat a highly ranked Ole Miss team who's projected to drop 2 spots down if they lose to Georgia, right? There's not that much more room for anyone to move. So that is a very, very key game for Miami, Texas, Penn State, Tennessee, all moving up in the rankings, and we'll show that here with the what if simulation tool here in a minute. Also, you have Alabama moving up 1 for the same exact reason. All these other teams are projected to win, right? Notre Dame's also projected to win, but Notre Dame is playing Florida State. It's a bad time to be playing Florida State right now. They are in no man's land, right? So if you have Notre Dame beating Florida State, even by a lot, it doesn't really say anything. Alabama, on the other hand, beating a ranked LSU on their turf, night game, that's saying a lot, right? So, according to our algorithm, Alabama would move ahead of Notre Dame with a win this weekend. Now, let's go ahead and play around with the what if simulation tool to see if we were to flip both those games, what might happen to the rankings. So let's go ahead and go to the what if simulation tool, free to everyone with a login. And here we are right here. Let's go ahead and change this to 30 to 28, and let's change this to 35-30, right? So we've completely changed these two outcomes of these games. Let's go ahead and look at the altered week 11 games right here. You have to make sure that you're only altering these games in the simulation. Let's go ahead and run the simulation. And here we are. Arrows and numbers everywhere. Why? Because Georgia is now moving from 3 down to 9. That gives room for all of these teams to move up in the rankings just for doing their part, right? They're not doing anything special. It's Georgia that's allowing all of this movement. So Georgia dropping all the way down from 3 to 9. LSU and Ole Miss moving up 4 spots to 11 and 12. And Alabama dropping 8 spots down to 19. That would be a 3-loss Alabama team. And I don't even know when the last time we had a 3-loss Alabama team, but it's been a while. So you have a 3-loss Alabama team dropping all the way down to 19. They're not going to make the college football playoff. That's too much ground to be making up. You would need some crazy situations to happen. Georgia has now 2 losses, right? Are you going to put them above a undefeated BYU, undefeated Indiana, 1 loss Tennessee, 1 loss Penn State, 1 loss Texas? No. you're probably going to put them in that 9 range, maybe even another spot down behind Notre Dame, who's been great the last couple of weeks. That's a big drop for a top 3 team. So that's definitely something that we need to be paying attention to. Another game that we should all be paying attention to is the BYU-Utah Holy War. So let's go ahead and check this out real quick. Right now, what we have is Utah being a 2-point underdog to BYU. Utah has the Cam Rising problem, right? BYU is hot as hell this season, but a lot of people did not love the idea of them being the number 9 seed, even with the season that they've had. Let's make matters worse. Let's say they lose this game 27-22, right? Utah should not be winning this game, but it's a rivalry game. You never know what's going to happen here. If we run that simulation, and just to remind everyone, I only altered this one. I reverted the other games back to their original scores. BYU drops all the way down to 17. That would be disastrous for the Big 12. There's no one in the top 14 that's representing the Big 12. That is a big problem, right? BYU would be dropping all the way down to the low teens. That's a terrible situation for that whole conference, but might give someone like a CU or maybe even a Kansas State opportunity to move up and really sneak in there at the last moment. So Iowa State's in a great position, right? Pittsburgh, even though they had a terrible loss against SMU, they're now back in the conversation. That BYU loss would be enormous for a lot of different folks. Now, here we are. We also do 10,000 simulations of Week 11 to try and figure out, if you give it a range of possibilities, what percentage of time do we see each of these teams on each of these different rankings? Right now, after 10,000 simulations of Week 11, using the ESPN FPI index for the probability that each of these teams wins, Oregon is projected to win or be the number 1 ranked team 92% of the time. They pretty much have the number 1 ranking locked up. That's because they're not. I don't think they're going to lose to Maryland, especially at home. That would be a major upset, right? So 92% chance that they stick in the number 1 ranking. Georgia and Ohio State are going to be 2 based off of Georgia's performance, right? Ohio State and Miami, they're also battling for that 3 spot. So, you really have a bunch of that 3, 4, 5 area that all has a little bit of, 50-50 ball, if you want to call it that. But everything else is kind of set in place. You have a couple of teams where, like, BYU had 80 out of 10,000 simulations where they were the 5 seed, or the 5th ranking. They're going to need a lot of help up front for that. So very low chance, but you have teams like Tennessee that have a slight chance of making it into the top 5, right? At least into the top 6, right? Alabama with a good chance of making it into the top 6. A 25% chance that Alabama is a top 6 ranked team after this weekend. They would need a big win against LSU to make that happen. BYU with a couple of small outside possibilities, right? Notre Dame, the highest at Notre Dame after beating a FSU team is really going to be up to 8, right? They're not going to make it much higher than that, and even that would be a stretch, right? Only 5%. So a ton of movement, a ton of exciting things to really go over. Exciting week ever, but it just takes 1 or 2 dominoes to make the whole thing fall down, right? If we have everything going that direction with those 2 losses, this could be a enormous weekend of college football in terms of rankings. So follow us all weekend on Saturday. Refresh your page. We'll have the rankings going on all the time. If there's a touchdown, go check out rankings right now. If you see that there's a big upset happening, go to the what if simulation and play around and see what might happen. There's so much to be going through. So have fun on Saturday. Check us out. After the games on Saturday, we'll post another video going through all of the different things that we saw and our final predictions for the college football playoff going into next Tuesday rankings release. So it's been fun. I appreciate all your time. Have a great Saturday. Thanks for joining us on Rankings Right Now.